What is up, my dudes? Matt here, life coach, HR, awesomeness guru. Today we're going to have another chat about body language. Episode 2. Let's just get straight into it. This one is going to be with regards to Boris Johnson's latest speech. Let's go. Let's do it.
It is now almost 2 months since the people of this country began to put up with restrictions on their freedom, your freedom.
So he emphasizes quite directly and congruently with regards to whose freedom is being at play. A lot of the times when we're having a look at body language, we want to have a better understanding of the fact that people want to have congruent body language. It's not just about looking at what somebody's doing with their thumbs and trying to determine the truth from that. It is a whole inclusive language, including so many different things. For example, if we have a look at Boris Johnson, it's something that's been bugging me for the longest time is his hair. A part of body language is also how we present ourselves to the world. So if we have a look at his tie and compared to the tie of the gentleman doing the sign language, again, we can see that there's quite a difference over there. If I remember correctly, we've got a single Windsor on Boris and we've got a double Windsor. When we're having a look at body language, it's not only specifically about the movements that a person makes, but also the manner in which they present themselves to the world.
Of a kind that we have never seen before in peace or war. And you have shown the good sense to support those rules overwhelmingly.
The manner in which he emphasizes words is a fantastic form of public speaking, and he emphasizes the correct words at the right time.
Put up with all the hardships of that program of social distancing because you understand.
If we have a look at the way in which people speak as well, a lot of the times they will use their gesticulations, their hand movements, in order to emphasize larger aspects or small aspects. And if you have a look at Trump, he will do this sort of with his hand to emphasize small, nitty-gritty, detailed orientated things, whereas Boris, his habits is more of a sort of closed thumb on top of a fist type thing. He also uses this sometimes in order to signify strength, but in that specific sentence, he's using it to signify individuality.
That as things stand, and as the experience of every other country has shown, it's the only way to defeat the coronavirus.
You can see there and there he's making a bit more of an open gesture with regards to a larger, bigger picture. Let's have a look at somebody who absolutely, quite amazingly fails with regards to public speaking.
Government must do more to restore the dignity of our people. As the adage says, you give a poor man a fish and you feed.
You can see immediately, and again, when it comes to speech has a rhythm to it. People speak in a rhythmic fashion, and as soon as that rhythm starts to become a little bit to the wayside, somebody's cognitive capacity or cognitive abilities or their thinking is overtaking their focus on talking.
Him for a day, you teach him to fish, you give him and
So here we've got Nicola Sturgeon's speech directly after Boris's speech. If you watch her, she's not only looking at her speech in front of her, but her speech had to be somewhat of a response with regards to Boris's speech. She mentions that almost immediately. Her rhythm slows down ever so slightly as she is taking in information on her podium instead of merely sending out that information, which is what you do in a public speech.
Some of the detail of his plan for easing restrictions in England. More of the detail of that has emerged this morning and will continue to come out during the course of today. I want to reiterate that those announcements do not apply yet here in Scotland. That is not, let me stress, for any political.
So again, when we're having a look at the clear body language with regards to the message that is being sent, you can see that she's saying no and her head is moving no. We'll chat a little bit more about nodding in a little bit. Earlier, we were having a discussion about Boris Johnson. We're going to have a look at just a few seconds of the speech. This is after he returned from being sick. just a strange thing. When we're approaching a challenge, which a lot of people will feel with regards to a microphone or a podium, they'll face that almost head on. He seems almost comfortable with the idea. He's so comfortable with walking up to the podium and having his discussion that he doesn't even look at the podium once, he looks to the side. Maybe it's fake confidence. What I can say definitely though, is if we go back, he says thank you to the person opening the door, but he doesn't look at the person opening the door. He doesn't acknowledge them. Strange. Also walks with his shoulders in a strange position. So this is where I was having a thought about with regards to his presentability with the previous speech that we had a discussion about. His hair is generally quite disheveled. Somebody that's in the public eye understands that they need to be presentable.
Morning. I'm sorry I've been away from my desk.
He's recovering from a sickness. We know what sickness he's recovering from. That deep breath is a lot longer than his usual breaths, or the breaths in between his wording in the previous one that we had a discussion about.
Good morning. I'm sorry I've been away from my desk for much longer than I would have liked. And I want to thank everybody who has stepped up, in particular the First Secretary of State, Dominic Raab, who's done a terrific job. But once again, I want to thank you.
You can see again, taking in big gulps of air. Let's have a look at another foreign leader. Right at the beginning, he's smiling at the camera. He's making direct contact with the camera.
My fellow Singaporeans, good evening.
So there, he makes two head nods to the people that he's talking to. So now a lot of people would assume that because of the nature of his Asian descent that it's a bow. Singaporeans don't bow.
My fellow Singaporeans, good evening.
So now, with this, I wanted to have a better understanding of nodding, because it is quite easy for us to assume that a nod can be a greeting or a nod can be a yes. However, in Bulgaria, a nod is no and a shake is yes. This footage is in regards to somebody within Donald Trump's team being sick. We know what sickness that she had.
Very good for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden today she tested positive.
So rubbing yourself in that manner, it sounds strange, but rubbing yourself as you're busy doing something, a lot of that is something called a self-soother, or something that a person does in order to comfort themselves in a situation that might be deemed as somewhat uncomfortable.
She hasn't come into contact with me. She spent some time with the Vice President. It's, I believe, the press person, right? Say press person.
Yeah, looking for confirmation.
So she tested positive out of the blue. This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great. The tests are perfect, but something can happen between a test where it's good and then something happens and all of a sudden.
So again, earlier we spoke about congruent body language, emphasizing a point.
She was tested very recently and tested negative. And then today, I guess, for some reason, she tested positive. So Mike knows about it, and Mike has done what he has to do. I think he's...
Donald Trump has a thing about controlling his immediate environment. It was covered heavily in 2017, and I like looking for it, especially when he's sitting at a table. Okay, we're going to watch 10 seconds of this, and then I'm going to go with you. We're going to dissect the hell out of the first 10 seconds of this interview. Let's go for it.
It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us again in Davos. We've done this before. That's
right.
I think it was a couple of years
Tell
ago.
me what you guys
Before
noticed.
We get started we're going to talk about the economy and a lot of other things. The CDC has identified a case of coronavirus.
First thing we're going to have a look at is Donald Trump's tendency to steeple. I noticed is that he steeples, then he gets comfortable, and then he steeples once again. Watch.
It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us again in Davos.
Steeple.
We've done this before. That's right. I think it was a couple of years ago.
Comfortable.
Before we get started,
Brain says compose yourself. There you go. So now what is it that made him go from a composed nature to a comfortable nature and then back? Now you might be so focused on what Donald Trump is doing that you forgot about what the interviewer is doing. Firstly, he greets him, he appreciates his time, which is only a natural thing to do when you're interviewing anybody, but then he immediately establishes a level of past, which is a fantastic manner in which to create rapport with somebody. Even if they don't remember you, they will associate a past memory with you, which then in turn means that they have established some kind of rapport with you, and there's an element of trust. The interviewer establishes this so fast, whether he meant to or not. His brain literally goes from leadership to comfort to leadership. Slap bang, quickly.
It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us again in Davos. We've done this before. That's right. I think it was a couple of years ago.
Watch the interview.
Before we get started, we're going to talk about the economy a lot.
There you go. So then he gets back into it. So now let's go back to it again.
Again in Davos, we've done this before. That's right. I think it was a couple of years ago. Before we get started,
it's comfortable.
We're going to talk about the economy, a lot of other things.
Starts a little bit there.
The CDC.
Fantastic. So in closing, my dudes, thank you for watching the video. Like, subscribe, be awesome, be cool, stay grand, and look after each other. Bye!